Yes, is it Tom or Shizuka who I'm speaking to?
Tom.
Hello, Tom.
Hi, Wayne. Um, yeah, both I and Shizuka are no stranger to what people call non-dual experiences, although neither of us would consider ourselves a finished product, as it were. But certainly, speaking for myself, I've become extremely anxious recently about things like climate change, things like the refugee crisis. We were both involved very heavily in helping refugees for about a year and a half. We were in a refugee camp, and although that kind of caused a tremendous amount of self-searching and a lot of self-inquiry and a lot of meditation, um, what can I say? I'm finding it very difficult to deal with the level of anxiety that I experience when I look at what's happening in the world. Some of it most definitely self-centered, what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to me kind of stuff. And some of it just more general, just a sadness and an anxiety about the stuff that we see happening. Now, that often turns on in the morning, and there's a point in the day where it just kind of stops and it's accepted. It just there's a sense of the peace behind it. There'll be periods where there's a peace and it's happening in the foreground, and there'll be times when it just switches the other way around, and the peace is very, very much in the background, and the anxiety is very much in the foreground. So that's kind of what's happening, and I was just wondering if you could offer some advice or thoughts on how that can be lived through.
Um, it may sound flippant, but you just keep breathing.
No, it doesn't sound flippant. No.
I mean, that's how you live through anything, is you keep breathing. Then what your reaction is, what your experience is of course dictated by vast universal forces. And I guess the from the standpoint of this particular living teaching of Advaita is simply to point to the fact that what you're terming anxiety is happening. It is arising. It's there, and generally, what we term anxiety is not very pleasant. So we don't want it to be there. It's quite natural not to want something that's unpleasant or difficult to not be there, but it is. And I trust you will do whatever is within your power to change that. And that's where the teaching comes in to look at what is within your power in this moment to change what is. And we do get empowered. We are given power in the moment to do things. We are given power in the moment to help others. We are given power in the moment to hurt others. We are given power in the moment to do all kinds of things. So, in this moment, what are you empowered to do? You are empowered to breathe. You are empowered to feel. And the, the color of those feelings, of course, changes. So if I had a foolproof means of getting rid of anxiety, difficulty, unhappiness, misery, uh, I would certainly give it to you, or at least sell it to you. But I regrettably don't have it. There is no foolproof means to do that, and yet it happens. That's the curious thing. I mean, the misery turns to pleasure. The uh, anxiety turns to peace. The uh, difficulty turns to ease. And this is the flow of life. This is the movement of living.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's about the false sense of authorship. Um, certainly been within my experience over the last, well, I don't know, 31 years that I've been looking at this. Um, that there have been times when that false sense of authorship has not been present. It has stopped happening. So that's it's clear to me. I understand, at least at some level, what you mean when you say that. And of course, the burning question, as I'm sure it is with many of us in, you know, it, where I seem to be struggling at is why is it absent at some times? What, forget the why word even. It is absent at some times, and at other times it's not. And of course, there is this overwhelming desire for it always to be absent. And the idea that for some people that has taken there is no longer a sense of authorship, that torment is over. So obviously the mind seeks some means by which it can make that happen. And what I'm hearing from you is that no such means exists. This is my
Yes
question.
and no.
Thank you. So can you elaborate on that, sir?
Yes, there are numerous means.
Yes.
Whether any of them will be, quote, successful or productive for you, we cannot say.
Uh-huh.
So the temptation always is to make it black and white, to say, there's either something I can do or there's something or there's nothing to do.
Mhm.
And, and then you can argue which one is true. But the pointer here is that clearly there are things to do. And you are led or empowered or drawn to do them.
Ha.
And then the impact of those things also happen. So when we begin to understand this whole play as a movement or a process, rather than a direct linkage of this causes that, one thing causes another thing, then perhaps there is a little more ease in the whole process. It's happening. It's
Mm.
unfolding. And it is unfolding as you and through you. And what the outcome will be, none of us can predict.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Don.
Wayne. So it's just a continuation of the last thought, which is uh, from what you were saying, like you said, that there are many means. So, over the years, there's been AA, Vipassana, Advaita Vedanta, yoga, this round and round it goes. Suddenly it'll change. They'll just be like, that stops, something else begins. And suddenly, from not doing that, you go back to doing that, and round and round and round. And all the time in the mind, there's decided which one's the right one. What's the right way to do it? What's the main, that has been going on for years and years and years, and just chopping and changing. And and then somebody says you've just got to stick to one and keep going in the same direction, and you will get to the goal. And again, that but it never. And then I was just sitting here thinking, I have absolutely no power over the fact that this this is what happens. Suddenly, the impetus to do that thing stops, and there's an impetus to do the next thing, and then that stops, and I have no power over that. I can't control that. And there's an idea that even then the mind says, and this is a process, and there must be a logic to this, and I must be able to make sense and make a path, or a kind of logical thing out of the fact that that happens. But even that is again some attempt to take control or ownership over it.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. that's that's just my thought there. Do I have a question? I don't think so. I don't think it's a question exactly, just
Mhm.
to kind of confirm that with you. Thank you.
So the interesting thing about this process is that it is inclusive. It it includes everything. Everything is part of your process. Every thought, every action, every change, every not change, it's all can be said to be part of the process, which is Tom, the unfolding of Tom. So it's incredibly inclusive. Curiously, when you take it from the other side to try and analyze the process, you're trying to figure out what isn't part of the process.
Aha.
What do I need? What do I need to like exclude? What do I need? How do I need to maximize this by getting rid of that? You
Hmm.
see,
Hmm. Hmm.
so
Hmm.
it's an exclusive happening, if you will, an exclusive perspective where you're excluding various things, or you're attempting to exclude various things in the hope of maximizing and getting more of the things that you feel are positive.
Yes, that's right.
In a very limited sense, this is useful in practical day to day kinds of activities. But in like the context of living your life, of understanding what is, it's not a particularly useful uh, way to approach it.
Yeah, I mean, it is an attempt to exclude suffering. It's an attempt to exclude everything that is painful, difficult, confusing,
Mhm.
unpleasant in some way, and try to simply keep all the stuff that I like and think is spiritual and good and positive and holy. Yes, of course.
So this is where it gets very subtle, Tom, is because differentiating the desire for change, the desire for something, which will necessarily exclude its opposite.
Hmm.
Well, not exclude it so much, but and that's where it gets subtle.
Hmm.
It's it is possible to have the desire
Hmm.
for something
Hmm.
without excluding its presence in the moment, saying, which is to suggest that what is happening in the moment that you don't like and don't desire
Hmm.
shouldn't be, that to somehow change the universe so that what is isn't, is different from having a desire for things to change in a particular way, which is, to me, completely normal and natural as a human being.
Sure. So yes. So wanting a painful situation in life to change and move on and become something more positive is a natural thing. But to say this should not be this way is to be in a hopeless position with regard to the universe, basically.
Exactly, because essentially you're denying the universe as it is.
Of course. Yes, of course. Yes.
And this would apply to what you started with about climate change,
Hmm. Yes, that's
to
right.
to to say, look, this is a what is a horrible situation with potentially devastating effects, and to have the desire to bring about some kind of change in this state of affairs is very natural, and I would say productive. It's a ultimately one most people would consider a very positive kind of uh, approach.
Hmm.
But when we are focused on the problem and saying this problem should not be, we then go back to trying to assign blame. Who's responsible? What where who are we gonna lynch? Who are we gonna decapitate and or string up in the town square and make everybody feel all right? And then we just keep going doing what we're doing because we found the villain.
Mm. I mean, I think what interests me is that there are certain things where, like say for example, alcoholism, which I know that my acceptance of that actually was the key to being free from it, and other things that followed from that initial fact, that initial reality.
Mm-hmm.
And then I move on to something else, and I go, but this is different. I will not accept this. And then that again seems to fall away. That almost the pain of being in opposition to reality almost sometimes seems to be the process whereby you kind of give in. But then again, I'm making another process out of that. But it's. But yes, absolutely. Yeah, that difference between can I do something positive? Well, maybe I can, and this shouldn't be this way. It is a very important thing to understand and note, isn't it?
I don't know how much you know about me or my background or
I
anything,
read
but
it, 12 Steps in Advaita, and I know,
oh, okay, so you're aware of that book.
I know that
Okay,
you came down that road as well. So yeah.
yeah,
Mm. Thanks, Wayne.
you're very welcome, Tom.